Welcome to the More We Know podcast with your host and social media influencer, Mir. Gen Zs and millennials.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the More We Know podcast. My name is Mir. I am your host. The More We Know podcast is a mentorship podcast where we bring experts from all around the world to provide you guys in an hour or less mentorship and from real world experience. So today we have a phenomenal guest by the name of Suzie York, who is the founder and CEO of Love Good Fats, which recently surpassed 100 million in worth of Love Good products sold. Suzie is also an 11-time Ironman triathlon finisher and a recipient of the 2020 RBC Canadian Woman Entrepreneur Award. She's an inspiration all around, and it's an honor to have you on today. Thank you, Suzie.
Well, thank you, Mir. Very pleased to be on.
Thank you so much. So this podcast is a mentorship in your pocket, and we are so grateful to have you on for the next 30 minutes to be our mentor today. So I know your story is online, so I don't want to ask questions that anyone can go find. But real quick, Suzie, can you tell us about, obviously you have a phenomenal business. You guys just passed $100 million, but growing up, I'm sure this wasn't necessarily the vision. Can you talk about your childhood and growing up?
Yep, a little bit. I was a French-speaking Canadian girl living in Montreal. My younger years, my parents were divorced, so I shared a bedroom with my mom for 13 years, and I have a twin brother. And we had a different life back then than a lot of people have these days. I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I grew up, but I certainly knew that, I remember at a very young age telling my mom, one day I want to have my own business. Like I wanted to be a businesswoman. And then I just wound up, was very strong in math and science. And I just kind of was trying to figure out what I should do after high school in CEGEP. And I wound up going to electrical engineering just because, my math was really strong and I wasn't too sure what to do. But by the end of the program, I was president of a students coalition and I had started a company on campus. So I pretty much was grooming to have a career in business without really realizing it. Back then, it was very different. And I got an opportunity to interview for a consumer packaged goods company in Toronto, Procter & Gamble. They're a very, very good training ground to learn how to build your own brand, whether your brand is packaged goods or yourself really in the end, or pretty much anything, credit cards, fast food, retail. Like a brand is a brand is a brand. Learning the disciplines that you need in the very tough consumer packaged goods kind of brand wars, which is the category I've stayed in for all my 25 years, but it certainly grooms you for brand building in any way. So that's how I started my career. And I just stayed in consumer packaged goods and CPG for the last 30 years, really.
Yeah, that's an amazing career path, especially to see where you have come to now as a result. I guess, so one thing we struggle with is specifically my generation of Gen Zs. I'm 23. A lot of the listeners are between 21 and 25. We struggle with the sense of depression coming into the corporate world because once you leave college, sometimes we deal with what we call the post-college depression, where you don't know what you want to do. You're at your first job. You don't know if you necessarily like those Microsoft Excel spreadsheets or whatever it might be. How did you tackle that, in your 20s, realizing that at the end of the day, I'm here to learn? And eventually, you said you were an entrepreneur at some point. I'm sure you had plans potentially to run your own business.
Yeah, well, my plans were kind of deep inside, and I think it took me 35 years to become an entrepreneur at age 50. So I'm definitely an exception. And I'm sure when you talk to, founders who have started their first company at 20 and 25, they have a very different background than me. And often by the age of 50, they have 10 different companies under their belt. So I'm quite unique. I was kind of eventually became to recognize that I'm an intrapreneur. So I was in big corporate for 20 years, big medium corporate, 6 multinationals. But I was like bucking the system a little bit. Like I was constantly looking for new jobs that were looking for change agents. And I was like, oh, I want to interview for that job. And then I would kind of go into this new company and I was like, wow, all these problems to fix. And I was so excited. And then 4 years later, the problems are fixed. People, processes, and positioning, the brand, the marketing part. You kind of put plans in place to strengthen all three, and then voila, usually the the growth challenge is fixed. So then I was like, oh, next one, and I did that. PepsiCo and free Doritos and Tostitos and Heinz ketchup and Diana sauce and Weight Watchers and Chef Boyardee, and repeat, repeat, repeat. So I'm a little bit different, but I think the issue you raise is a whole bigger issue. My daughter is 21; she's fourth year at McGill. There's, now we're struggling with COVID, so this whole sense of post graduation depression or pre graduation. What am I going to do when I graduate? And the world is tough, and the reality of the world is tough. Like if you're studying in business and you realize that businesses aren't perfect, and every day Gen Z and every other generation is pointing out the issues with the world out there and pointing out that there's not enough transparency, and there's this issue with this company and this issue with this industry, and it's a very difficult time in a tough world. I think when I graduated, first I knew, quote, nothing about business because I graduated in engineering. I mostly spoke French. I kind of got dropped in as this little French Quebecer, French speaking. I was one of two French Canadian employees in the entire head office in the big corporation, in the Canadian head office in Toronto, in big scary Toronto. Us Quebecers back then were hesitant about Toronto, I guess, if you were a pure laine Quebecer like I was. So I was kind of just naively plucked in and trying to find my way, and realizing that there's disconnects with the Quebec culture, and how we kind of are really authentic, and that and communicate with Quebecers. They have a different preference of brands and culture and values. So that was kind of one thing that was coming to mind. Back then, I had to learn the language and I had to learn business also, and the world was much less transparent. So you were really just focused on problem solving. My brand is declining or not growing as much as it should grow. And, it's the big, like, battles of share wars. I lived pricing wars, the big, large consumer packaged goods kind of having big fights of pricing, innovation. So the world, and you were just relentlessly focused on your job was to solve the problem that your brand had. The world is so different now because it's not just about, winning a share war. It's winning the right way and ensuring that your company embraces all of the values that we need to embrace. And, right now we've just had all the Asian hate issues pop up last week. A year ago, we had all of the issues with the George Floyd murder. For the last 3 years, we've been Love Good Fats. Myself personally, I'm lesbian. We've been a very strong voice in Canada with celebrating diversity. Love is love. There's been tremendous issues with the trans community and the ongoing murders, and Indigenous communities and the murders of women in Canada. I mean, it's nonstop, and as a leader of a very small company, we have 20 employees. We're putting money, we've donated, we're putting money and we're putting time. The big push we did last year was to just get every single large retailer, Loblaws and Whole Foods and Sobeys and Walmart, to support us with our Love is Love, celebrate diversity. Like, my vision, my goal was, like, across Canada, 3,000 stores. You walk in the store and you see the pride flag and you see our logo and you see the word Love is Love. And every box sold, it was donating $1 to the charity Rainbow Railroad that saves lives. And we're a small little miniature company in the big world of companies, but I said, no, we're gonna spend this money and do this as a big priority, and all the retailers supported us. Now, with COVID, we didn't have as much, we had like, $1 million worth of boxes going into the stores to celebrate. So we had to taper that down. But, we're trying to do as much as we can. We've donated 50,000 bars to the healthcare workers. We've donated nearly 50,000 bars to the food shelters. I mean, we're trying to do what we can. We also have, difficult times with COVID. We have employees. We have a brand that's getting really hard hit in these times. It's a tough world out there. And I think for the Gen Z generation absorbing all of the issues we just talked about, but we're also living in a year, which will come into a year and a half and maybe 2 years of COVID, which that alone, blows, blows a big hole in all of your potential dreams and kind of makes you reassess everything. So it's a very challenging time. And all I can say as a mom and as a CEO is that, every day and every week we try to reassess and make sure we're doing the right thing, and we're going to mess up, but we're just doing our best to do our part.
Absolutely. That's really powerful. And, one thing I was going to ask, as you know, the bar industry is extremely crowded, right? You go into Whole Foods, I see so
Yep.
many different bars and a lot of friends that have bars, and just there's so many. So one thing that clearly sets you guys apart is the mission statement. I'm big on hearing things about the mission, to
Mhm.
hear the story behind what you guys are doing. Uh, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure, like the bar category in Canada and in the US is, referred to as being really aggressive, hard to penetrate from a business perspective. It's so
Mhm.
very tough. The benefit of the bar category having low barriers to entry is that everyone's kind of has a new bar idea and wants to come in. The shelves in the US are 40, 50, 60 feet. So there's a lot of competition. So the positive is you can get in. The negative is a lot of other people can get in. So you really, really have to have a good idea. And if you want to kind of get into the bar category and stay in, it's a tough dynamic. I've heard a number where there's 400 bars, brands that are under 1% market share in the
Wow.
U.S. So it's crowded and there's a lot of new players and you have to be on your toes. We were very fortunate with the idea I had was to embrace good fats and low sugar. Fat is back, sugar's out. Sugar's the enemy, the real enemy for the last 40 years. I had made fat my personal enemy. I was wrong. We all know that we were all wrong if you had taken that approach. Sugar is the real enemy. Even, today, like you could not talk to any single doctor or dietitian or nutritionist that won't say, if you want to do one change in your diet, just eliminate sugar. Um, so my mission was to change how we eat in North America, get the message out that fats are good and sugars is the problem. And that's a powerful insight. I was misled for 40 years. I cut fats and instead I ate sugar to reward myself with especially when I was training and racing, which is really bad. I hit my mid 40s and I hit a wall health wise. So that's kind of the promise is to communicate that you can have delicious tasting bars and foods which are loaded with good fats and only healthy ingredients and very low sugar. That being said, then keto kind of hit and really amplified the message so that a lot of people became aware that a ketogenic diet is really good for weight loss, really good for diabetes and the metabolic diseases. It has a lot of health benefits. There's over 100 clinicals right now, including Alzheimer's and cancers and the big four. So there's a lot of science to looking into all of the double clinicals to show the health benefits of a diet which has more fat and very very low carb and sugar. So we kind of launched at the right time. The positioning was solid, a delicious, ridiculously delicious bar that's also good for you. The products were really clean. They taste great. No one's ever done a bar like our truffle bars. You just take a bite and it melts in your mouth. If you think you're eating like a truffle candy type of a bar, so it's just soft and the fats all melt and you're like, whoa, like what's that? And it's only 1 gram of sugar. Um, So we kind of had, positioning, product, price value was right. So 1, 2, 3. Then we did awareness and trial with grassroots. My partner and I lived in the stores in Canada for the first 12 months. And then we just got more and more shows and sampling. And then we got, Loblaws and Walmart and Costco sample. And then we went into the US. So we had the right awareness and trial plans, and we benefited from some tailwind with the COVID momentum. So we kind of got, a big five in terms of the strategies you need. Now COVID's like, boom, a big headwind to that tailwind we had, but we were able to establish a very sizable brand. Um, we're still small in the world of bars, especially in the US, but at least we've built a strong brand and a positioning. So now we're maneuvering through less bar consumption.
So I'm a big consumer of your bars. So I lost 100 pounds and I'm on my journey right now for losing my last 100 pounds. And I couldn't agree with you more. The whole concept that you speak about the sugar, that's my biggest struggle. So what I do is I'll get your bars, the Love Good Fats, and at nighttime, because that's when my cravings really hit.
Yep.
If I used to go for the Snickers or the Kit Kat. Now I can just go grab one of your bars. And like you mentioned, a gram or so of sugar, I'm fine. Right. So it's amazing.
Well, congratulations, and for sure, if your weak link is sugar at night. Mine was after my meal. Even though I'm full, I would have the brownie and the caramel sauce. And I was like, oh, I did a 4-hour bike today, and that was my reward. Or I did a race, so I was managing calories. But oh my goodness, that was so bad when you think about it, right? Cutting out, the butters and the creams and the butter and the good fats. So if you can do that, like what we hear a lot and what we know from how our bars are formulated is you'll feel really full. It's the right fats and the right fibers. So, again and again, we have people asking us for half bars because especially, women my size, you can't eat a whole bar, like you're too stuffed. So, well, congratulations and keep on your journey, because that's all adding years and years to your life by doing those things now. I learned way late in my life that I wasn't eating the right nutrients. So I'm, 54 now, and I've changed my diet for 3 years, and I'm all, knock on wood that that'll all catch up to the whatever damage I made. But it's, journey in progress in terms of trying to figure out the right nutrition that works for you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for your product. It's helping me a lot in my journey. So thank you. So, you mentioned you're 54, which by the way, I'm shocked to even hear that. I thought you were much younger. But on the other side, that's actually amazing to entrepreneurs because again, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of us, especially because we see social media, what's out there, people have these private jets, this perfect lifestyle. I always tell people social media shows us the makeup. It doesn't really show you what's behind the scene. And which brings me to my next point. So I know you're very humble about the growth that you guys have had, but correct me if I'm wrong, basically 3 years and some change you guys have been around, correct?
Yeah, we launched our first, so it's just 3 years and a bit. We started selling the first PO came in for $4,000 in August of 17, and by September 1st, the boxes we just about had to myself deliver the boxes to Whole Foods because it was that tight between the manufacturer to UNFI to the store, and we had demos booked that weekend. But yep, September 1st, we were in 10 stores, and then we got to 100 by Christmas, or 150. And then it just took off. Like we launched 2 flavors in September and then 2 more in February. And it was like, go, go, go. So it went really fast after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know you touched on the 5 key things, product fit and strategy, et cetera, to help grow that. But I guess if you can touch on a little bit, to go from 0 to $100 million of goods sold, what was the secret there? How did you do it exactly to go in 3 years?
Yeah,
So quick.
very good question. Yeah, I had someone ask me recently the secret ingredient, and then he gave me a hard time a little bit after, saying, well, you never answered. And I was like, well, it's a combination of things, but it really comes down to the positioning. Like, what is your brand promise? Like, are you making a promise to the consumer of something they either didn't know they needed, or they knew they needed and no one else was filling that void? So your positioning is your most important work. And when I was doing consulting before, and right now I'm still getting lots of outreach for advice. And the first thing I'll say is, show me your brand positioning, and is it differentiated, or is it superior, better or different? And if you're not better or different than your competitors, you're kind of in no man, no woman's land. So positioning, 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 and sweat out your positioning until you really know that you're strong enough with the promise you're making to the consumer and all the attributes as to why the consumer would believe you and what's the compelling insight. So positioning is really key. Then product. If you make a promise to a consumer and your product fails to deliver, and you're zero for high, then you're not going to sell any, especially in bars. If you're over $3 in bars, it's in the US, it's really hard to sell. And then if you're priced too low, you don't have any cash and you run out of money, which is happening a lot, right? A lot of brands in the last 12 months are just folding. We're getting, emails every couple of weeks of some brands just kind of closing shop. So positioning, product, price, value, and then you have to have a little bit of money left over to build your team and to build awareness and trial. The magic ingredient for us was probably being at the right place at the right time. So, we've heard that expression for 50 years. A lot of brands have been built that way, but it's a little bit more than that. Like you can be at the right place at the right time and still mess it up. So, but it certainly helps when you're at the right place at the right time. So if you're thinking about a brand idea and you're kind of seeing the insight is powerful, the trends are going that way, don't miss that. And the benefit that us entrepreneurs in our DNA have is speed. So the downside of the larger corporations is not speed, because it's risk averse and you have 1, 2, 3 years of testing. The benefit of the entrepreneur is speed. So if you have that foresight and insight and you have that DNA, you can go to market first. And we all know that first to market is a powerful, powerful competitive advantage. Well, that would be our secret weapon, probably, the being at the right place at the right time.
I love that. A lot of value there. But the key to what you also said is being at the right place at the right time. You have to plan and prepare as well and look at the trends. It's not just magic.
Yep. And if you launch with the right name at the wrong price and the wrong product, well, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of the discipline that you'll learn on in the CPG industry in particular, the discipline of the basics of brand building, combined with a little bit of good luck and a little bit of timing, a little bit of speed, and a lot of supporters around you. We've had angel supporters that have invested in the brand. We've had employees, we've had retailers that have given, like went to present and basically saying, give us a chance. And then they did. And then, wow, it's flying off the shelf. Then they're calling me saying, do you have more? Do you have more? So it's a combination of variables.
That's amazing. That's a ton of value there. So I know the audience will find a lot of value in that. Thank you for sharing that. Now, one thing when I was researching your story is I saw that early on you said that there was a point where the company could have failed. Correct me if I'm wrong there. Could you touch on that and tell us what exactly happened?
Yeah, for sure. Like many startups, it seems the story is similar in many cases. Is I had a really good idea. I had a PowerPoint presentation. I had my the insights and the trends and all the articles and books on fat being good and sugar, and then I had some draft names and concepts and positioning, and I had consumer research starting to show more and more appeal, and this is going to be a big idea. I had some early investors, angel investors that all said, you're on to something. Here's $10,000 and here's some investment. And then and I had amazing samples, all like first my kitchen, then an R&D lab, that food lab, then with the co-packers, and with one co-packer that I first partnered up with, because I had 30 reject my idea, but I had one who said, yeah, we can do that. And we did 8 months of samples. We had over 150 recipes. I think by the time we landed on the one recipe in 2 flavors or 4 flavors, I guess, that would work, But the big day, where we game day, where I drove to Montreal and spent the day with the team to make the bars. They weren't able to make the bars. So at that point in time, with the machines just couldn't get all of the process working, because you don't have binders, you don't have what holds a chocolate bar together, or most other bars together, is sugar and carbohydrates. They're called binders. And fiber is not a binder, protein's not a binder, and fat's certainly not a binder. So I had 3 non-binders trying to bind with nothing to bind them together, because I was like, no, I don't want any of that stuff in my bars. So we thought we had, in smaller scale, we had found solutions. And again, we had 150 recipes. I had bars melting all day long for a year, like, okay, let's change this, let's change that, let's change this. So we finally got to a recipe that worked, presented to Whole Foods, presented to UNFI, presented to Purity Life. But then we got to production day. And once turn the machines on to make 100,000 bars, it wasn't working in the big machines. So after 12 hours of trying, I kind of drove back home on a Saturday night, pretty teary, and a bit in shock too, because we were listed in the natural distributors in Canada, and we were supposed to have a product on their shelves in 12 weeks or 11 weeks. So hit the Rolodex the next morning. Gen Z might not know what a Rolodex is, so it's your contact on your iPhone. And again, worked really hard. My network got an introduction to a co-packer who is our partner still today, and changed the course of the company.
Wow. So, and that Saturday night where you were going home teary-eyed, a lot of us tend to quit there when it doesn't go our way. You stood through
Oh,
it.
yeah, that Sunday will stay in my mind forever. And it was a tough day, but what do? You get up, and you're pretty bummed inside, right? I'm actually kind of just teary talking about it. Like, what do you do? Like, it just so I went for my run and kind of got that out of my system, and then darn it, hit the phones. And there was some good karma that happened. There's so I think I was really scared deep inside, because when you have 30 no's, goodness gracious, right? Like, who did I not call? But it just wind up that someone who had kind of passed, or just I wasn't able to kind of get to a full kind of, the owner picked up the phone and called me back. And he's a lifesaver to the company, so eternally grateful, and we're thrilled to be partnered still to this day. So it all kind of worked out, but it's a hard product. It's a hard when you're trying to make a product that doesn't have binders, and you need the product to bind and hang together, and then not kind of melt and become a puddle of melted fats. Like, it wasn't easy. We worked with 2 different PhDs. So I was in all of the different shows, and I had samples in my backpack, and I was in Las Vegas, and all of these ingredient shows, and connection after connection after connection. So talk to this expert. I was like, I want to talk to every expert in North America on fats, because I was trying to figure out how to get the molecules to connect and bind without binders. So it was a
Wow.
lot of work, and we kind of figured it out. And now we've had a good recipe for like the 2 years of, like, we're very, like, the plant is made, again, millions and millions and millions of bars. But it wasn't easy to figure it out. So there's a lot of product stories that are similar, where there's just like, it's never been done before, so it's hard at first, so don't give up.
Thank you, Susie. I think the most important thing there is it's not as easy as going to an R&D or a manufacturer, say, here's my recipe, I'm ready to launch. You had a lot of passion in there of,
Yeah.
you're working with the PhDs, and just wow.
Yep. And I had to, I met so many co-packers. Once we started making bars, they were like, well, we know how to make protein bars. And I'm like, yeah, but we're making fat bars. And we kind of realized very quickly that, at one point I was probably one of the best experts in North America on fat bars. Because,
Wow.
no one had ever kind of spent a lot of time on fat bars. So it all worked out.
Wow, that's amazing, Susie. And to see again, 0 to 3 years, 100 million plus in sales. Thank you for paving the way for us as an entrepreneur, and especially a woman leader. for especially in a world that needs that. So thank you for all you do.
Well, thank you, Mir. Thanks for having me. I mean, podcasts like this are highly appreciated. It helps get the word out and some awareness out. It's a tough world out there right now with COVID. So appreciate everyone doing what we can to stay healthy and mentally and physically. And we're all looking forward to returning to a new life of being out and about soon enough.
Absolutely. Make sure you guys check out the Love Good Fat bars. They are delicious. I can attest to them on my own weight loss journey. And where can the audience find you on social media or your company? Can they follow the
Yep.
company?
Love Good Fats is really easy to find. So Love Good Fats is on Instagram and Facebook. Our website, lovegoodfats.com. We just moved to a new website a couple of weeks ago. The Canadian one is in 2 weeks. And we're on Amazon Canada, Amazon US, and we're in for 16,000 stores. So we're pretty easy to find to try our bars. Appreciate it.
Well, excited for the next 100 million. So thank you, Suzie. It's a pleasure, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Mir.